Hello, everyone. You're all welcome to session 1.6, addressing. You're welcome to session 1.6, and our focus here is on addressing gender ethnicity in forestry education. We're just waiting a few. Okay, I think Pipette is here. Afia, can you hear me?
Oh, finally, I'm here. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, Paket.
John, I think
Hi.
it's maybe like 9 minutes past. So maybe we just started.
Okay.
Kind of like teaching session from the previous day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome everyone. My name is John Boachidamkwa, and I'm sharing this session with Pipette. This session was divided into two. We had the first session yesterday, very interesting discussion. We had three presenters in addition to myself, where I just want to give you just a brief outline. Because we don't have much time, I can't really go into details of what we discussed, but then I'm sure in the discussion session, I can have that opportunity to chip in. But we have three presentations. The first one was from Professor Tarek Sharek, who really talked about the findings from the Global Forest Education Assessment Project on regarding gender and ethnicity. I think that report is out, which everyone really can have access to that. And then we had another talk from Stina from the Swedish University of Agricultural Life Sciences, who really basically talk about forestry education and its norms. And she shared her personal experiences of some of the challenges with students and also with faculty who are women in forestry education. And I basically talk about a work that is being done in Canada to improve gender and diversity in the Canadian forestry sector. I basically draw on statistical data from Statistics Canada and also enrollment in secondary education, and to really see how we are making progress with gender and diversity. And I'm hoping that after the presentation, we had very, very interesting discussions as to what we can do beyond that to improve gender and diversity. And I think one of the key outcomes of the whole presentation discussion was really the need to improve on data and access. In terms of gender and diversity, what we realize that there is really lack of data on that. So we need to know what the problem is before we can really find solutions to it. So that was really the key outcomes of that work. And so I'll then leave it to Piper to start the discussion for today.
Thank you, John. I'm kind of like rethinking on how we will do this session because it's already like 12 minutes past. But anyway, hello everyone. My name is Pipit Larasati. I am a research associate at Oregon State University in the US and also a civil servant at Central Java Forest Service in Indonesia. So I will be your moderator in this session, session 1.6, addressing gender and ethnicity in forest education. So we will have 4 presenters from all over the world. The first one is me. I will talk about my PhD dissertation on gender and leadership in the forest sector industries and higher education. Second presenter is Elias Andersson, an associate professor at Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, also coordinator of the IUFRO section on gender in forestry and deputy coordinator of the IUFRO task force on gender equality. So together with colleagues, he has studied and published on gender and gender equality within Swedish forestry over the last decade. After that, we will have John. John, I think he also mentioned to you, he is currently a postdoc research fellow with the Canadian Institute of Forestry, or CIF-IFC, and currently supporting a program called Free to Grow in Forestry Initiative, Free to Grow in Forestry, Gender Equity in Canada's Forest Sector National Action Plan. So John's work focuses on gathering evidence on the barriers and challenges faced by underrepresented groups in Canada's forest sector, including women and indigenous peoples, immigrants, people with disabilities, visible minorities, and LGBTQ2S+. And we will have speaker number 4 is Anne Wekesa. She holds a master's degree in forestry science and is currently a doctoral candidate in the University of Canterbury, New Zealand. Prior to enrolling to the program, and was a full-time assistant lecturer in the School of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at the University of Kabianga in Kenya, and is currently teaching some courses online. Uh, we also have Kathy Young as our rapporteur. Kathy is from Indonesia and a second year undergraduate student majoring in forest engineering in Oregon State University. She is currently working as a research assistant on student evaluation on experiential learning on mass timber. So since we have time limitation, so maybe from each presenter, we will only have 7 to 10 minutes max for each presentation. Kathy will also help for timekeeping. Kathy, if you are there, can you please say if there's only 2 minutes, minute 6, and then remind to all of the speakers, please. And then after presentation, we will have total 30 minutes for Q&A, and then there will be a closing remarks from John. Now, before we start, kind of like a little bit warming up, we want to know about you a little bit. We have 17, okay, one participant added. 70 participants from this session. So now here's what we will do. When I ask after counting to 3, so 1, 2, 3, please write the country or countries where you join this conference. So when I mention countries, for example, like me, I'm currently in Indonesia, but my affiliation is with the US. So in the chat box, I will write Indonesia, US. So I repeat again, when I ask after counting to 3, so you need to wait until 3. Please write your country affiliation or countries where you are now. The idea is to get everyone posting in very similar time and get the hype where we are around the world. Okay, everybody is ready? Okay, we have 18 participants. Okay, open your chat box. Okay, and then I will start to count. Please type your country. 1, 2, 3, go. Type your country and send. Wow, Thailand, Canada, Italy, Nigeria, US, Rome, Italy, Nigeria, Bulgaria, Indonesia, UK, India, Sweden, Wales, New Zealand. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, we have all over the world. Woohoo! It's really global session. This session. Okay, good. Mexico. Oh, hi, hola. Brazil. Oh, cool. Argentina, Italy. Buongiorno. Is it still morning? Buongiorno. I hope it's still morning in Italy. It's already afternoon here in Indonesia. Okay, so with no further ado, I'm going to share my presentation, me as the first presenter. Let me see. So give me a moment, we still navigate in here. I will share my screen. Okay, what do you see right now? Do you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, anyway, I cannot see with my current screen right now, I cannot see in the chat box. So Kathy, if you can help me currently like reading some of the question or something like that, you can like let me know. And John, please also let me know if there is something that I need to give attention. Okay, so my presentation today, and then It's with the title Women in the Forest Sector Leadership, a qualitative multi-country study. So this is actually my PhD dissertation. A little bit about me. So I'm graduated from IPB University Indonesia. I work a lot with community in and around the forest, from planting to entrepreneurship programs such as furniture makers, sawmills, and ecotourism. Then I got a scholarship to pursue my Master of Forestry Science at University of Canterbury, New Zealand. So for anyone who is not talking, can you please mute yourself, please? Thank you so much. And then I'm currently graduate with PhD in wood science at Oregon State University. And a little bit of flash info, Elias, our next presenter and I are involved in a task force at IUFRO called Gender Equality in Forestry. So if you are interested to know more about this, please visit the IUFRO website and navigate to Task Forces, Gender Equality in Forestry. Okay, so my overall work is based on SDG number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So the timing of this study is never better than before due to a general transition from a graying workforce to a new generation of leaders and workers. So considering that women in leadership, especially in forestry, is still perceived as an uncommon reality, this study aims to investigate women's perspectives on gender diversity and their leadership experience in the forest sector. So the general objective itself is broken down to 4 chapters with research questions as seen in this slide. This research contribute to positive social change by raising awareness of people who are working in the forest sector and informing policymakers to support an equitable and inclusive workplace environment. So here is the diagram of my research framework. Because perception of the forest sector as a male-dominated field are related to both workplaces and forest education, I aim to do research in both profit and non-profit organization. And this is my respondents. We interviewed respondents from 4 countries: US, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. And of the 4 chapters in this dissertation, the first 3 have been published, and the 4th is under review with a peer-reviewed journals. So here are some of the key findings. So consistent with the previous studies and global statistics, all respondents perceived the forest sector to be a male-oriented and male-dominated. So gender construction of forest-related knowledge recognizes men as the voice. In article number 1, respondent indicated that although there are positive changes in the industry towards more gender diverse and inclusive workplaces, the movement is slow. So these slow changes might be culture-based, where traditional perception about gender roles and what men/women do in organizations still remain deep. To achieve better gender diversity and inclusivity, respondents in article number 1 suggest it is necessary to reach a critical mass of women in leadership positions, which is believed can create a more women-friendly working environment. Women are typically seen as more empathic. And then to attract more women in the forest sector, 2 alternative solutions proposed in article number 2. The first solution can be implemented by focusing on the role of the forest sector in mitigating climate change and supporting a more sustainable future economy with providing green jobs and a healthier urban-built environment. Article number 3 discussed 2 important factors regarding student leadership experience: peer relationship and gender stereotypes. Most respondents became involved in leadership opportunities through encouragement from their peers. So they were less interested in seeking top leadership roles because of a fear of negative evaluation by their peers. In article number 4, most of our respondents agree that mentoring and networking are important to address gender inequality in the forest sector. However, it is quite challenging to find a women mentor or role model because women are underrepresented in the forest sector. When it comes to gender dynamics, our respondents emphasize the different benefits of having women versus men mentor. In a man-dominated field such as forest sector, women mentors provide psychosocial mentoring, the interpersonal aspects of the relationship. For the respondents, the women mentors enhance social belonging, confidence, and motivation in relatively alienating environments. So same gender role models might also protect women from negative stereotypes and show how women can advance despite existing gender barriers, which in turn enhances women's intention to retain and pursue career in the forest sector. On the other hand, cross-gender mentorship is favored in career function. In professional settings, women might reap more benefits from men mentor because men have long been advantaged in the forest sector. Therefore, men can confer organizational legitimacy and provide resources required for success for their proteges. So for more information about this study and my research, I invite you to visit my personal website at www.competitive-forest.com. Thank you. Okay, I will stop my share. How's the time management? Are we good, Kathy? You can unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. So, Elias, you will be in the next one. I will navigate your slide first. Give me a moment.
Yeah, but while we're waiting for a slide, hi everyone, nice to see you all. My name is Elias. I'm a researcher at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences and been working with mainly issues of gender and gender equality within forestry, mainly focusing on Sweden over the last decades, and have published a bit at least together with colleagues on this topic, and my idea for this presentation is to provide, since the format is quite limited and time-wise, I will try to provide some reflections based on our experience of both with relation to the research that we have done in relation to the processes that has been going on in Sweden over the last decade, but also the involvement and development of forestry educations in Sweden and the master and bachelor programs that we are facilitating here at SLU. Next slide, please. So the first thing that I think is important to reflect upon, and I think that also, unfortunately, I missed the session yesterday. But what Jan said from the recap from yesterday is that the importance of actually reflecting and also investigating what is actually the problem and how is the problem formulated with regards to gender and gender equality. And how is that framed within relations to different types of initiatives and measures are important to reflect upon. Not saying that there is a right or wrong approach, but it's also important to to be aware of the limitations and also the specific assumptions and problem formulations that comes along with different types of framing of these related challenges. And as we also heard a bit about in previously session and so on, the issues of awareness of forestry education, and also with regards to gender equality, has been highlighted quite frequently. And there is a lot of emphasis on sort of recruitment and sort of in relation to that of raising awareness, also to sort of communication issues of how do we spread the word about forestry education, and that is sort of as seen as one of the main challenges and barriers for gender equality, and maybe primarily with regards to gender balance, because that is as people said just before, we know in many contexts that forestry and forestry education is a male-dominated sphere, and that this constitutes specific types of challenges of actually improving gender balance and gender equality in relation to that. But also this kind of quantitative approach to gender equality provide specific sets of understanding, but also opportunities with regards to what is the problem? Is there a problem, and where does that lay? Is it connected to education? Is it connected to awareness? Is it connected to communication? Or where does actually the challenge or the problem of gender inequality lay? And it's important to reflect upon that in order to also make sort of measures. Anti-discrimination and harassment, this kind of legal side of gender and gender equality is a quite vital one, especially within the sort of the Swedish context, where we are sort of mandated by law to make sure that students are not harassed and discriminated within the educational setting, and that is sort of if you could regard it also as sort of at the bare minimum of engaging with gender equality, to make sure that at least these kind of negative outcomes of gender equalities are minimized or are excluded from educational settings. And also in the Swedish context, we also have a mandate that we need to investigate all types of to make sure that there are no discrimination or harassments within the education. And there is a very high responsibility for us as educators and as a university to make sure that there is equal opportunities for everyone. Gender equality also is crucial to when we talk about sort of the learning environment, and how that actually affects the sort of both the teaching but also the learning of students, and how does gender and gender related aspects impact that with regards to sort of equal opportunities, but also what types of topics and values that are emphasized. And the last one, which I also would like to emphasize even more further, is that also to keep sort of gender and gender equality issues also separate from the gender as a scientific field and knowledge, where it's also important with regards to sort of mainstreaming and integrating gender aspect within teaching, to also to engage and also to reflect upon this from different perspectives, that where there is a need for both initiatives and both types of measures to work, but it's also important to highlight this also as a scientific field and knowledge areas that provide a basis for gender equality and development. Next slide, please. Sorry, one more. Yeah, and coming back to Swedish context, the development of gender and gender equality within this context has sort of taken, I would say, three main steps that has pushed the development in the way that where we are at the present moment. We had national gender equality strategy that was initiated in 2011, where education was one of the areas that were highlighted. There was a number of measures that were taken, mainly focusing on this kind of recruitment and awareness raising, motivating younger people to move into forestry educations and so on. While then we had the Me Too movement in Sweden, and where in the Swedish forestry case there was a specific campaign or hashtag, Final Feld, that highlighted many of these kind of discrimination and sexual harassment issues, both with regards to the sector, but also with regards to very much to the educational sector, and where also the student and the student union later on published an open letter to the university, where they emphasized the need for change and improvement with regards to gender equality. And after that, there has been sort of an increased attention to these kind of issues, and a number of initiatives have been highlighted. One of those are, for instance, the training of all staff on gender and gender equality issues, both sort of examinators, but also teachers in general, and people with course responsibilities, which is working now, going each year. And then we also developed a specific course that's focused on gender competence, that I will come back to and say a bit more in the end. And now the final development is a mandate that has come from the Swedish government to all universities, is that we need to gender mainstream our educations, that gender needs to become an integrated part of our teaching and also our educational systems, and where there's now been and where we're still in the sort of the starting phase of how this will be implemented, but that there is a new parallel organization that has been developed parallel to the work environment organization that will help of implementing these kind of issues. Next, please. And if we talk about sort of what is gender equality and what is gender inequality within the Swedish from the Swedish experiences, we see that there has been a, yes.
It's 30 seconds to 10 minutes.
Yep, I wrap up. So there has been an extensive focus on gender balance or gender imbalance. We have this kind of responsibilities that has been negotiated or dealt with between education and also forestry education. Where is actually the problem at? Is it at the educational, or is it at the forestry organization, the forest sector? Where is the problem and reason why we don't really attract women in the same sense as men? Also, is it the teacher and the educational side, or is it the student that is sort of the main problem within this kind of challenges? And where this, as I said, gender imbalance, and with the focus on gender balance, women to large extent become sort of the agents of change. And there's also been very much focus on sort of information and training as the way of emphasizing the problem. Yes, and time's running out, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias. Sorry to stop you. We are kind of like time is being our kind of like limit ourselves here. So we should move to the third speaker. But before that, John, while I'm navigating your slide, can you please introduce yourself? I know it's a little bit repetitive, but the floor is yours.
Arpad, is it my turn? Oh, I thought I'd go last. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, now it's yours.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here. My name is John Boachidankwa, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow with the Canadian Institute of Forestry. And I am doing work that focuses on, so there's a national action plan to enhance gender and diversity in the forestry sector that is a collaborative sort of initiative between academia, industry, the nonprofit sector that are working to do that. I'm supporting that initiative to see what kind of evidence we can gather in order to improve policies at the workplace. Yeah, so next. Well, I must say, as I already alluded, this work is, the work that I'm going to share with you today is part of a very broader work that is being led by Professor Maureen and Stephen Watt, but also a lot of other people who are part of it. And the work has currently been, the National Action Plan and a final report on the evidence on diversity in the Canada forest sector is already out there. I can share that report if you are interested in that. And basically what it seeks to do is really to gather the evidence on equity and diversity using basically statistical data from labor force statistics published by Statistics Canada. And I think the key thing that comes out of that is that we need other kinds of data like qualitative data, because the statistical data can tell us the trends and what the state is, but it can't explain why those things exist. So that is really one of the key outcomes of the work. Next. Well, so today, really what I want to share with you is that I'm going to share with you some highlights of the report. But the first thing I'll focus on is on some gender trends in forestry education. And then I will then move on to talk about the key highlights of the report in terms of the nature or the extent of diversity in the forest sector. What is really the big picture out there? And then I will then part with some key lessons for conclude with some key lessons for next steps that can really support improving diversity. Next. So the first data I want to share with you is on data on training of forestry professionals. And this is data that dates really fairly recent, between 2015 to 2020. So we call that a silver rank data. So what really happens is that there are several professional forestry programs run by universities and colleges in Canada. And once you finish any of these programs, the Canadian Institute of Forestry sends you a rank, a silver rank, to indicate that you have finished that program. And once you graduate. So I use that data that they use to provide the ranks to the students to be able to understand the nature and the extent of gender differences in enrollments and in completion of forestry programs. Now, what I need to highlight is that these programs are offered by 8 universities. So these are professional programs that are offered by 8 universities. And then you have close about 18 colleges that offer technical programs. So first the professional program, and then the other one is the technical program that are offered by colleges and just one university. Now, this data has a lot of limitations. The data is really not available for all the institutions, and it's not available. All institutions are not available, and definitely not all the years. So that is the need, the context within which we need to understand the data that I'm presenting, that it's not complete, and it's not for all institutions and not for all years. Another thing is that it only focuses on gender. It doesn't provide information on immigrants, indigenous people, and other visible minorities that are part of the program. Next. So from the technical programs point of view, in terms of training, what we see is that the proportion of women in technical programs has really, if you see from the data from just 2015 to 2020, has grown, but really not that much. The sector or the number of people who graduate are still highly dominated by men. Close to about 2/3 of the programs are dominated by men. So from the perspective of technical programs, I think really there's a lot that needs to be done to reach equity levels. And the data I just here, even though very limited, shows that the number of people who graduate from the program are just still close to just a little over 1/3 are just women. And the bulk of them are still men who graduate from these technical programs. Let's go to next. So for the professional programs, I think there that are run by the universities, you could see that the enrollments and completion levels for women has really improved. it is close to equity levels, as you can see from here, from 2015, where you had just about 38%, and by 2020 you had close to almost half of the people who are completing our program were women. So in the professional programs, you could see that there's a lot of improvement. Now, what we don't know is why there are differences between the professional programs and technical programs, and why there seems to be a lot of equity levels, or women are reaching equity in relation to the professional programs compared to the technical programs. Next. Now, so another thing that really comes out is that even though the data is very limited, what we can see is that, especially in the professional programs, you could see that at least women are reaching equity levels in the training of professional foresters. But I think the bigger problem is that what happens after they leave the program. So there's a lot of issues with retention. We don't have a lot of information about whether women are retaining in forestry, which sectors do they go, do they prefer to work in government, in NGOs, in forestry companies, and whether they are retained or not. That data is not available. It is only professional forestry associations that are found within each province that are able to document that data. And that is also really not available. So what we see is that there is this, so I'm just showing here a very, very brief or very limited example from British Columbia in terms of registered professional foresters. And you could see that there's a lot of leakage of women out of the profession along the way. So if you can see from age 30 to 70 and over, you could see that consistently the number of women who are in the professional foresters are decreasing. So we don't really know why that is the case and why there's a lot of leakage in the system. And so it really suggests that retention is really a very key issue. And whilst we are really focused in the education sector and improving diversity, I think another key thing that we need to do is that how do you retain and how do you make sure, why is the leakage occurring, and what can we do to enable, to provide policies that will enable women to retain in the profession. I think that is one key thing that we need to know, even though as we focus a lot of effort in the education sector to make it easy for women to be part of the process. So we can go next. So I just want to compare that with really I talk about a lot of leakage in the system. So I just want to compare that with what is happening in the broader labor force statistics in terms of women, indigenous people, and then immigrants. So in the Canadian context, there are three main underrepresented groups in the forest sector. The first is women, the second is indigenous people, and then the third is immigrant. Now, when you compare the proportion of women in the labor force, they are just about 17%, but the proportion of women in the Canadian population is close to about 50%, but just about 17% are in the labor force in the forestry sector. Now, this hasn't really improved that much. In 1996, I think the percentage was just about 14, and by 2016, we are just about 17. So we really haven't improved that much in that sense. Now, when we look at the indigenous population, here, their proportion to the general population is just about close to 5%, but here you have it about 7%. But this might differ when you look at specific forestry regions where you have a lot of indigenous people who are there. So that is also a limitation there. And then for immigrant constitute close to about 23% of the Canadian population, but their proportion in the labor forest sector is just about 12%. Now, I must say that beyond these sort of broad trends, there are also a lot of differences that might occur, especially within specific forest sector occupations. So either it might be favorable for indigenous people within specific occupations, or it might be favorable for women or immigrant. And that data is also very important. So let's go next to highlight just a few of that.
So 30 seconds to 10 minutes.
Okay,
so
yeah, let's go next, yeah. Next, yeah, click. Yeah, so this is just an example that shows in terms of when you are segmenting the job categorization in terms of where women are most likely to be. So for a lot of the women, we categorize it under 4 main sectors: forestry and logging, support activities, wood manufacturing, and then paper. And here you can see that a lot more women are within the support activities. Now, unfortunately, that is a sector where you have the fewest jobs. When you compare that indigenous people, the same, a lot of them are employed in the support activities, and that is the area where you have the fewest of jobs. So that is really one thing that that comes out of this work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Sorry to stop you. And Anne, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So while I am navigating yours, you can start your presentation by introducing yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to be one of the speakers in this session, Pipit. And thank you very much for the introduction. So I want to say kia ora to everyone who is attending this session. I'm in New Zealand. It's almost 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And I'm happy to share this with you. So I'll quickly jump straight into my presentation because of time. And my presentation is basically, I'm going to talk about my personal reflection on how we've had gender diversity in forest education and higher education. And I'll give you some statistics based on New Zealand, where I am studying. I've done my master's here, now I'm a PhD student, and also from 2 universities back in Kenya, the University of Kabianga and University of Eldoret. I was a student at the University of Eldoret for my bachelor's degree, and I normally teach at the University of Kabianga. I'm just currently on study leave. Next. Just a bit of an introduction. The New Zealand School of Forestry is the only school that offers professional degrees in forestry in New Zealand. And we do have diploma in forestry, which is offered by another institution. And this institution has been around since 1970, so it's just over 50 years. And it has 2 undergraduate programs in forestry, Bachelor of Forestry Science and Bachelor of Engineering in Forest Engineering. And we have 3 grad programs, that is from the postgraduate diploma up to the PhD. So if you want to study a professional degree, you have to come to the School of Forestry here in Christchurch. Next, please. So looking at the theme of our session, I just had a slide, I got some data from the administration on student enrollment. And looking at this, looking at 2 years, 2020 and 2021 now for the undergraduates. And as per representation in New Zealand, we have female, male, and we have minority groups. So we have the group which they call the Maori, who are the original people of New Zealand, the indigenous New Zealanders. They are called the Tangata Whenua of the land. And we have the Pacific Islanders, who are also the old immigrants of New Zealand. And they comprise, their population is about 7.4 of the New Zealand population. And they are also taken as the minority groups in this country. And these are the people who come from the nearby islands. And then we have international students. So looking at the enrollment in 2020 and 2021, we had about 120 students in 2020, and we had female at 30%, and we had the Maori and the Pacific Islanders taking about only 9%. We didn't have any international, much international students in 2020. And when we look at 2021, looking at the female, male, and then the indigenous, the underrepresented groups, the Maori and the Pacific Islands, you can see that in year 1, just go back, please. If we look at 2020 and 2021 year 1 enrollments, you can see there is an increase. So we had a few Maori, the underrepresented groups, and now in 2021, we had an increase in enrollment. And for the female students, you can see the figure is almost similar, but there's an improvement. I'm just trying to now show you how New Zealand is trying to approach gender diversity in the forest industry. Next slide, please. So towards the end of 2019, the New Zealand Forest Service created a scholarship, the Ngara Hipiuru Rakau Forestry Scholarship. And the aim of this scholarship is to increase the number and gender diversity in the forest sector. And every year they are awarding 3 scholarships to different programs. That is, if you're doing Bachelor of Forestry Science, or you're doing a diploma, or you're doing a Bachelor of Forest Engineering. Students are given scholarships to study for 4 years, and they are also given paid summer internships at the New Zealand Forest Service or in the forest sector. So these scholarships, since they came on board, that's 2020, 2021, and we are having a lot of marketing going about in social media, trying to encourage students to come and study forestry for free, where they don't have to finish school with any loan. And this is what has led to, looking at the previous charts, we have an increase in student enrollment from especially the underrepresented groups, the Maori. And also this is quite important because in New Zealand, the Maori are the indigenous people who own the land. So if they have to do any afforestation program, they have to agree that that is fine. So it's good to train their own people so that they can talk in their language. Next. Looking at the School of Forestry postgraduate student enrollment, now when we talk about student enrollment numbers are going down. I attended yesterday's session and it's all over, even in New Zealand. And there is a bit of big diversity. International students, we are the majority of the postgraduate students in the School of Forestry. We do have a few New Zealanders. I think now we only have like 2, but the majority of us are international students from all over the world. Next, please. So if I look at it from the gender point of view here in the postgraduate students here at the School of Forestry, from the chart, you can see that male are actually dominating. And actually, if you look at us, you might think we have more women, but it's only in 2017 that we had a balance of 50-50, but generally there are more male in the postgraduates at the School of Forestry here in New Zealand. But because most of us are international students, so that the scholarship that is being offered by the New Zealand Forest Service is for the undergrad students, just the New Zealand citizens and permanent residents. Next, please. I'll take you back to Kenya, University of Kabianga, where I teach. And we have 3 forestry programs: Bachelor of Science in Forestry, Agroforestry, and we have Environmental Studies. Our enrollment numbers are going down. And at the moment, because of COVID, it's really a big challenge as well, because now when we switch online, back home, it's worse for students to learn online. So most of them actually dropped out and some. And I think we also have a challenge because for us, students are assigned to a forestry program by the Joint Admission Board. And most of the time students do not choose, but what is happening is the Joint Admission Board is actually not admitting students into forestry programs. So we don't know what's going to happen next. So looking at it at the University of Kabianga, I got this data from one of my colleagues. We can see that we also have a lot of male. But if I look at it from the time when I did my bachelor's degree, we were only two ladies in class. So to me, I think there's a big improvement. So we have ladies coming up to study forestry. And talking to one of my students, I asked her why she chose forestry. And actually she said she was really involved in a lot of environmental work in high school. And that's how she loved forestry. So she's one of the people to really confirm that if we take it back to high school, we will get students coming to do forestry. Next. So I talked to one of the deans at the University of Eldoret, where I did my undergrad, and also to just look at the enrollment numbers, which are going down. And actually in 2020, they actually got no student. So their numbers are also going down. We have lots of forestries. We have lots of universities offering forestry degrees in Kenya anyway. It's not like here it's only one, but in my country there are many. So they're trying to share the student numbers. So they didn't get much. So the numbers are going down from like 2015 over 30 down to, I think this is around 3 on 2021. Next. And the story is the same. If I look at it from the gender perspective, and you can see the male are dominating, but the female are also coming up, because if you look at 2016, it's almost 40-something%, almost half, though the numbers are still lower. But to me, this is a good sign because we have female coming into the program. And this is something that we really need to embrace, and hopefully it doesn't go down going forward. And next. So this is just for me to conclude. I just wanted to be a bit fast to give you an overview of what's happening. As much as we do have an enrollment decrease, which is a global issue, we do have female, and we have a lot of diversity in this lack of a gender balance and diversity in higher forestry education. But I've noticed that what I've seen from New Zealand, when they started offering scholarships and we have Indigenous students coming in to study and they're quite happy, I think that's one of the catalysts that we should be looking at. If we can offer scholarships and maybe internships that are really guaranteed, we'll have more of these minority groups and female joining the forestry program in higher education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we already have 4 presentations. And Kathy, how much time that we still have until the end of the session?
We have 32 minutes.
Okay, 32 minutes. Okay, so I open the floor for questions, comments, suggestions. This is kind of like relatively small, so I would encourage everyone to speak from their perspective. And if you have questions, please do ask. We are here and we are open for discussion. Go ahead. If someone want to ask question or giving comments.
Well, I want to ask Annie a question, just a follow up on her presentation. I'm wondering for the number of international students who study forestry, since this say that if you look at the graduate programs, it looks like a lot of them are international students. So I'm wondering, are there opportunities for international students to work within forestry? And where, yeah.
One of the things that, for example, here in New Zealand for our undergraduate students, because they are normally trained based on, it's a very good interaction between the industry and the school. So most of the time, if the students are doing undergraduate degrees, they get jobs before they even finish. So in the first semester of the final year, whether you are an undergraduate, domestic or international students, and as long as you don't want to go back to your home country, you are guaranteed of a job if you are doing your undergraduate degree. And most students normally, because if you meet students doing law, they somehow do not know what forestry is all about. But when they understand that if you're doing forestry degree, even if you are paying you on student loan, you are guaranteed of a job at the end of your 4 years. So that's one of the things that we hope will go about encouraging if you're doing undergrad. If you're doing postgraduate degree, New Zealand is a small country and the market is quite small. But what I've seen is some of the students, like they are finding job in Scion, which is a research organization. But most of the students here, what I've noticed are on government scholarships. So they finish and they have the obligation to return to their home country. So as much as they come here and get the qualification, most of like half of the students will go back home to their home country to pay back the bonding or as per the scholarship requirements. But those who stay are able to get job in the New Zealand Research Organization. A bit of postdoc opportunities, they are not many, but they are also here in New Zealand. Yeah.
Thank you. So I saw a question in the chat from Petya Slavchevs. I think the main predomination in the sector comes naturally as a result of personal choice, not of discrimination. So can someone please give an example of a gender discrimination in the forestry sector in their country? So example of gender discrimination. Anyone want to comment first?
Well, I think maybe Elias might have a view on this, but Elias, want to go first?
No, you start, John.
Well, I think we need to really place a lot of things in context. And when we talk about discrimination in the forestry sector and why there are a lot of men as opposed to women in the sector, I think there's a lot of historical antecedent to that, and we shouldn't lose sight of that history. And I think what we need to understand is that one of the main barriers has been the understanding or the framing that forestry is a man's job, is this brutish always cutting about trees and that sort of thing. And that historically has enabled or has really suggests that, okay, it's men who are supposed to be in the sector. But I think forestry has broadened beyond that. And there are a lot of opportunities that both men and women can do. And from the letter that I know, I haven't really done a lot of research in this sector, but from the letter that I know over the past year in Canada, we've done some of my colleagues have done research talking to women in forestry, indigenous women in forestry, and some of the experiences that they share in the sector. One of the key things that really comes about is that a lot of them describe the sector as an old boys club, like it's a male-dominated field and it's really highly protected, right? And a lot of them feel that they have people that they enter the forestry sector with at the same time. And you then have opportunity where they tend to go ahead faster than you. And you don't really see a lot of women at the leadership positions or leaders that you can aspire to a mentor to, or who can really mentor you. And they also talk about a lot of issues that were very negative, very hostile in terms of being very sexist. So some men colleagues and bosses are really not very supportive and really very hostile in the environment that you find yourself. So I must say that it is really very complex. It's not really straightforward to say that it is a matter of choice. I think there are real practices of discrimination in the sector, and we need to come to that understanding that is real. I may not be able to give you that specific example, but it is real. When you talk to those who are in the sector, they will tell you that these things are real, and choice is really not the only reason why you have more men in the sector. Maybe Elias can add to that.
No, I think I fully agree on that, and I also, it also comes back to this kind of discussion of what is actually gender equality and gender inequalities and how do we regard them, because there is sort of multiple levels to work on these kind of issues with, as I also highlighted, this kind of anti-discrimination issues, but then we have also this kind of work environmental issues about who is being included and what norms are dominating the field. And the specific example I can give from Sweden is coming back to this Me Too movement from the sector, where there is I think it was in the end 130 testimonies of sexual harassments to women from men in the sector, and I think that is sort of the top of the iceberg in some sense, and that there is many of these kind of issues that you highlight, John, that is also reproducing this kind of image about who is knowledgeable in forestry and what aspects of forestry, because we also see a very strong gender segregation within some areas of forestry, that although that in some sectors maybe we can have a more moving in a more gender balanced area, looking at the general picture, but when we look then into the sort of the division of labor, we see that there is also sort of some areas that are more dominated by men, production oriented areas, for instance, in the Swedish case, I would say, while sort of nature conservation restoration is maybe more female dominated, not dominated, but there's a higher degree of women, at least in the Swedish context. So I think that there is sort of multiple levels to and ways to look at it and try to engage with it, because it's not just one thing to get people in, but also sort of what are the barriers and so on.
Hello, could I speak? I am Sandra Ines Rivero. I am from Argentina, 20 years since that I am living in Italy, forest industrial engineer. But I would like to thanks to Pipet, to Elias, we said in Argentina, to John, and as well to Anne. You had a great presentation, all of you. And but I would like to, I took note about a certain point regarding to this question. Is a question of gender. I have an example. It's a long time that I don't take a statistic but that I can tell you as an assistant, you is a woman who can do, not as a leader. You can see presidents now, they, thanks God, the women are growing in this sector. Because we as women, I'm born in a family. We are 5 girls and 1 man. My father was so proud when he born. Instead that I am the latest, I'm the youngest. Of course, imagine, I am the youngest and I am a lady and I am an indigenous origin. Imagine. And I decided to study engineer because I said in the industrial forestry sector, and that is a question that people, I like it a lot because she said the empathic. We women, we have this good thing that the empathy we have. Of course, we can carry trunks, we can, okay, I am driving, but little cars, not a truck, for example. But I can tell you that we have intelligence and we are smart at the same level as the man. We are complementary. And we need to, how we said, selling glass, this glass roof, we should try not to push down the men on the other people, only to show that we have the empathy. This is a stereotype as indigenous are women. This we should try to fight a bit, but this is only my point of view. Okay, it's education, but the education need to, and I like it. One of you put the hearts of the forestry sector. Of course, we should care about the environment because we have the heart, and we should be integrated. I can tell you because it's my point, my life. We should both integrate human and professionality. This is my point. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's a very nice insight, and also thank you for John and Elias. As a women and then gender research in the forest sector, I am thankful for our ally like John and Elias who are standing and speak up for us, for women. So the question, back to the question about gender discrimination, I also see some of the comments from other participants in the chat box. It's also naturally correlated with culture issue. Yes, I agree. Because that's how men and women are raised, born and raised. It's also rooted in the culture. And then it also reflected in the workplace, including in the forest sector. So what we want to achieve right now is like balancing the gender. Okay, thank you for mute yourself. to achieve a gender equality, but in this case is something that we extensively focus on gender balance or gender in the number. So I would say that based on my research, when I interview women leaders in the forest sector, they give us many examples of gender discrimination, which also leads, so the discrimination itself, it can be as small as preconceived bias, like something that you always do without you realize that it's actually discrimination. For example, you as a boss, you have 2 tasks, and then you want to distribute your tasks to your staffs, and then in your mind, when it comes to logging the tree, Sony gitu Ekpe, can I ask you to mute yourself? Thank you. Back to my explanation. You will give the task who needs physical, more physical. You will give it And then administration to women. That is preconceived bias. You should ask them first before you deliver that task based on your assessment. And okay, yeah. Come back. As big as discrimination on career, climbing the ladder, just like Sandra mentioned about glass ceiling. That's also one of the real example for women to achieve the career, especially as top leaders. When it's so glass ceiling is the phenomenon of invisible barriers when women cannot achieve the top management position. So maybe Elias also can be can confirm it. But some of my respondents are women professors. They say that although the responsibilities are quite the same, they are paid less than their men colleagues. Okay, Elias, I saw that you raised your hand. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just would like to pick up on Gabrielle's comment in the chat about sort of I think it's the epistemological and ontological challenges of educational framework and integrating gender aspects, and I think that is something that I have really challenged with when we at least starting to sort of integrate gender issues within the teaching, because now we are talking about sort of gender equality issues that relates to sort of the sector and the educational setting, but then the other part about it that I think is important also to highlight is how will we integrate gender and other types of social aspects within the educational system, also within the teaching. And there, I think it is a big challenge that I have met, at least for getting people that are engaged and that are quite long gone within sort of forestry education to actually reflect about social aspects and how to actually use theory and those kind of issues. That is something that you need to sort of reflect and work on, and where we have had big use of that. We developed a book with sort of I think it's 25 chapters from different researchers on gender equality studies that has been done within the field, that's sort of taking theory and apply it to specific setting, a forestry setting, because that is often the thing that the students are asking for. They think that the general gender theory is too general, and why they have it's hard to actually implement it in a forestry context. And that's the reason why this book has been quite good help when we have developed the course the last 3 years of education, that actually get them a text that is sort of not a popular scientific, but at least a bit more accessible than sort of traditional gender writing. And I think that has been something that has been very fruitful in sort of implementing and actually engaging people. Yeah, unfortunately, it's only in English, in Swedish, unfortunately, because that has also been sort of a key thing to actually, since very much of our teaching, at least on undergraduate level, is in Swedish. And for that reason, is also for accessibility issues, we have also done it in Swedish. But it's called the Open Forest. It's called Sex, Gender, and Gender Equality in the Forest Sector. And then we did this book a couple of years ago, the first edition, and then we asked the people that had published any research when they with regards to gender to write the section or write a summary of their study in a sort of more popular scientific way. So I think each chapter is about 10 pages and it summarizes quite well and raised some theoretical aspects at least. So that has been very fruitful and something that I think has been a good help.
Okay, thank you, Elias. So we are, I think it's 12 minutes left. if there's any one short question or comment, I will still open the floor. I mean, we also start the session 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
So I will open for one more question / comment / suggestion. Anyone? Nope.
Well, if there is none, I thought we could. I think we, to a very large extent, we all do agree that there are very deep obstacles to increasing diversity in forestry, in the profession, and also in the educational sector. But I'm wondering whether we could be more progressive and think about what are some of the ways that we could think about removing these obstacles. Are there any best examples that anyone could share or know of how can we remove those obstacles that we all do agree that do exist to increasing demographic diversity in forest-related professions or even in education? I think Anne did talk about her experience with, especially if you expose young people in high schools to environmental education, especially women. It's likely that some of them might take forestry education at a higher level, but I don't know whether beyond that there are any sort of best practices that anyone knows of that might provide opportunity to reverse current trends that we know.
Yeah, I think I have like some examples in the US is mentoring and networking, especially for women. So there's one article about that. It's called SWIFT. It's Women in Forestry in University of Maine in the US. I can share the article with you later. And also right now I'm currently researching about women's network in forestry. So the interesting part from this piece is like we have 2 case studies. So one case study is network that only open the membership for women. The other one is opening for all gender. So it seems that it's contextual based and also on how they navigate, because one is in the US, the other one is in Austria. How these women navigate challenges, the problems that they found, especially when they manage their forests or woodlands. So I think we only have 10 minutes left. I will still open the floor if there's anybody.
I think and you want to, her hand is up.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Who is that?
Anne?
Oh, Anne. Go ahead, Anne.
I was actually trying to type. To me, I think one of the things that is going to encourage is, I think I like the plan that the New Zealand Forest Service has come up with, offering scholarships for women and underrepresented groups. I think that's a very good way to go forward, and also have those guaranteed internships. Because personally, from my own experience, when I did my undergraduate degree, and as part of the curricula, we had to go for internship at the end of 3rd year, and I got an internship in the wood industry. So I was actually on the bench working with men in the factory. And because we were being paid, it was quite motivating. So though I was the only lady in the workshop, that was really nice. So I think that's a very nice way of thinking about it. So I've worked with men as me alone in the workshop and having lunch with men, and it was really fun.
Great, and thank you for sharing. And I also see one of the example from Elizabeth Auger in the chat box. Okay, since it's already like 8 minutes before we end this session, I want to read some of the conclusions. Not conclusion, but it's more to be like what we have discussed so far. So we have diverse speakers, and starting from that diversity, we also express our experience, our opinions, but also based on our research in the case study in the US, Canada, Finland, Sweden, New Zealand, and Kenya. And then we also agree that there's actually increasing awareness of gender equality, but it's more to be like focus on gender balance. So it's more to be the quantity, the numbers in the forest sector. But forest education it's not in the overall sector itself. So here we encourage forest education can be the forefront to reach the goal. From Sweden, we have programs such as Gender Equality Strategy that is launched at 2011, Gender Mainstreaming at 2020, which is like integrated part in integration, how to integrate gender in the education system. From Canada, we have Gender Initiative in the forest sector. John mentioned about Free to Grow initiative and also evidence report launched at 2020. From N, we have a case study in 2 universities, in the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, who is currently giving scholarship to increase women and indigenous students, and also a case study from University of Kabianga, Kenya, who are evidently have more women enrolled. And now I have a heavy rain. Welcome to Indonesia, everybody. So John, can you please close the session? I think I've got notification that we only have 5 minutes left.
Well, I think I will just reiterate what was said in the plenary session, that if people can really find a call to action. I've shared that link with you again, but I just want to have just some few comments here and talk about in terms of really going forward. I think one of the key things that we really need to think about as we think about these sort of broader issues is first, I think there is really the need to gather the evidence in terms of what the challenge is. I think in most instances, the key to addressing the problem really lies in what is the evidence, what are the specifics, and that then provides the opportunity to see, okay, where can we bring solution in? So I think I don't know in your various countries whether there is really evidence in terms of diversity, discrimination in that sector, and I think that is what we've been doing in Canada, and that requires a lot of partnerships with the industry themselves, with academia, with government, to really gather the evidence in terms of what is there, both qualitative and quantitative. I think that is really the starting point to this sort of bigger discussion. Because without data, without the evidence, it's really very, I don't know what legs you are standing on to make policies. And I think one of the key things that also came up in the first session that we had was the idea of whether affirmative action is really very important in the sector. And I think there's a lot of a political angle to that. But one of the things that I also raise is what is also increasingly coming up is the idea of the business case for diversity in forestry sector. Because some have argued that we've really talked about the moral arguments, the right argument for greater inclusion, and that has not really worked. But is there a way that we can engage industry and say, okay, for industry, their motivation is profits, productivity, innovation. And now there's a lot of research that basically shows that if you have a very diverse workforce, that has a correlation with productivity. So can that be a sellout point to industry and say, okay, can that be a way to engage them? Now, in the first session, I think it did come out that it's that argument or that approach depoliticize the need for greater diversity. But I think what we need is that we need a very comprehensive package that includes not just affirmative action, but maybe the business case and all that. We need to look at which people are we dealing with, what are their interests, and what can we do to improve diversity in the sector. So I don't know which sector you are in and what you are doing in this space, but I hope that we can all contribute to this discussion, and I think it can continue beyond this forum that we have. So thank you everyone for being part of the discussion.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everyone who are participating in this session. Please keep in touch. I post our link on task force. And also my personal website for your information.